Alright everyone, so we have new mage items on the PB. We need to talk about it because Freak made a video. I'm not gonna watch 1 hour of this because I already did for you guys. But that's regardless. Let's see what they're doing. So basically the TLDR is they're nerfing and buffing some mage items. Where in the video? Let's talk about it again. I kind of forgot. It's like somewhere here. Okay, it's here. It's here. So okay. So first of all, Road of Ages, this is already last patch, which just happened. They removed like, what, 50 HP and 5 AP or something like that from the item, or 10 AP, I forgot. So basically the item lost like 150 gold for efficiency or something like that. So it's a small nerf to Roa. I think Roa is going to be overshadowed by a lot of other mana items slowly, and people are slowly going to build less of it. They overrated it already before. So then, Seraphs, so okay, before I continue, right, it's very clear that Mage System as a whole has a couple of flaws and a couple of good things, right? The flaws are very simple, like items like Zonia and Leechbane and Banshee Whale fucking suck to build because they all have terrible build paths and they all give you like no haste, like especially like Zonia and Banshee, they give you no haste, so they're very horrible to build and the stats just aren't there. They're not that cost efficient items, so those are just not good mage items in general. Obviously, you're buying Zonia or Banshee in very specific scenario. And for Leechbane, the problem is just horrible build path. Leechbane just has a very bad build path. If you're like a Feast player, you want this item, but the item just has terrible build path, right? Then there's a couple of good mage items. Like Shadow Flame is a pretty good item. Riftmaker is a very good item. Liandry is obviously a very good item, which they're also going to nerf. Liandry, right now we have this raw Liandry meta, blah, 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 blah. The reality is that, yeah, health stacking is pretty strong because like, I don't know, let's say you are playing Talia and you buy Seraph and Roa, just because you don't have the most efficient build at doing damage, if the enemy can't kill you, then you will end up doing enough damage to win the game, because if the enemy doesn't kill you, then you're gonna win, and that's kind of like the mentality a lot with these builds. HP stacking is very OP, Liandry is very OP on certain champions, but also a little bit overrated on certain champions, that just depends. Like, for example, the issue with Liandry is that it's only 70 AP and you're also using that gold into 300 health. Now, if nobody's focusing you and you're playing a range champion, the 300 health can often be wasted. And also like let's say I'm playing Xerath, for an example, right? Xerath has really good AP skills. I don't want to buy Liandry because it only gives me 70 AP. I want to buy other items that are more AP efficient. But then another problem with these mage items right now that we have in League is that you can't get very high amounts of AP in the build. And this is because Rabadon kinda sucks. Rabadon is not a very good mage item. And there's a lot of mage items that don't give you a lot of AP. So you need to play a specific champion to get that amount of AP. So like in late game you can reach like 800 AP, but then you also need usually like Gathering Storm in your build and stuff like that. Anyway, to continue with the mage item ramble here. So Void Stuff is a pretty good item. A lot of people are building that. Kriblum is pretty, I mean, it's not that weak. Kriblum is actually kind of fine. They gave it 5 haste. The problem is like, so Kriblum has higher win rates than Void Stuff on vast majority of champions, but people still buy Void Stuff. Now, it obviously depends. I think in competitive play, Void Stuff is usually just better, but in solo queue, Kriblum is just underrated. It is probably true that Void Stuff is maybe slightly better in vast majority of cases. Morello Nomicon is a bad item. You buy Oblivion Orb, you don't want to upgrade the item. Morello Nomicon is only okay if the game goes to 6 items and then you're full build and you complete Morello into the full item, and then you really need Grievous Wounds, you're playing against Rakamundo. Right. Storm Surge, pretty bad item. So just in general, like items like Ludens, Storm Surge and Shadow Flame are very low elo skewed. Okay, and what I mean by that is these items, low elo players buy all the time, even when they're not the best items to build. Like a good example of that is like Syndra, right? Cosmic Drive and Blackfire Torch is by far the best Syndra build, has been for many months now. People in low elo are still buying Ludens or Shadow Flame, and they're losing games because of it. Bloodletter's Curse, not that bad of an item, but the stats just aren't there, and it's kind of... The problem is that like you need a champion that really can stack up this passive. Now, when I played Mel, I thought that one single Q would stack up the passive instantly, but it actually only stacks it by half. So that's another problem with this item, is that it stacks too slowly, I think, or it just gives too little stats. It's kind of on the weak end. Now, if we talk about mana items, okay? Lastly, I just want to say that I think Cosmic Drive and Horizon Focus are really good items in League right now, and vast majority of players just don't understand that. They don't know how to read Cosmic, and they don't know how to read Horizon, and the problem that Riot is facing is that, like, especially Horizon Focus, it's too unpopular for how good it is. And then, okay, and then lastly, talking about the 4 mana items that we have Seraph, Malignance, Blackfire Torch, and Ludens. Now, for many, many months now, anyone with any brain and whoever can read the item knows that Seraph and Seraph and Blackfire Torch are by far the best items for mages. Now, we see this in pro play lately, we see this in high elo lately, the last couple of months. People have suddenly realized that, oh, Blackfire Torch is the best mage item. Even when champions like Zoe, for example, you can go, or Lux, which in theory would make more sense to go Ludens, you still go Blackfire Torch in a lot of these cases because the stats and the item being how cheap it is just better than Ludens. Ludens sucks. I also saw on Reddit some people complaining that Ludens should just get buffed to passive, but I don't think so. The passive of Ludens should not be buffed, and I really do agree with this with PHREAK, because PHREAK has this mentality that passive of, like, item passive should not just be one-shotting people, right? Items should be mainly stats, and I completely agree with that. So I really like it that Riot is not, like, leaning into this bullshit and not buffing this passive, because, like, Ludens passive should just not be one-shotting you in lane. It's a strong early game passive, to be fair, when you complete the item, but it obviously falls off really, really hard. Now, okay, to continue the ramble, so basically, Seraph and Blackfire Torch are just by far the best mage items they have been this entire time. Malignance is very situational. It's not that good, but it's very situational. It has it has very little champions that use this. Even a champ like Lux, who wants to spam ults, shouldn't be buying this. I think, like, best items, like Ahri and Annie, I guess, are, like, probably the best champs at using these items, maybe some other ones. And then talking about Ludens, yeah, the item just sucks. So Riot is obviously trying to, like, buff certain items now to shake up mid-meta and nerf certain items. Now, let's see what they do. So, okay. Road of Ages, they nerfed it last patch. I do think that they don't need to nerf it again. I think the way they nerfed it was wrong. Again, I said this a lot of times. They should have nerfed Catalyst instead, and they should have just made probably the scaling of item harder and early game stats of the item weaker. Seraph's Embrace is getting nerfed next patch. It's going to be 25% less shield. I don't think this is the end of the item, because Seraph still gives you very good stats. And what is the amount of times that you use the full shield on Seraph? I don't think this always happens. Like, you have to remember, Seraph shields oftentimes gets procced randomly, okay? It oftentimes just gets procced by a minion or a damage, and then they don't focus you for 3 seconds and the shield disappears. So honestly, not the end of the world for Seraphs. Lianji is getting minus 10 AP. I think very good change. Lianji, this is very good because they basically don't nerf the champions that like Lianji, and they nerf the champions that kind of can use the other items. Like, a good example of this is Lilia. I don't think it's the end of the world for a Lilia or for a Swain to lose 10 AP. But they still get the burn. They will want the burn. But for example, a champion like Victor losing 10 AP, or a champion like, I don't know, maybe Orianna losing a 10 AP, that's going to hurt a lot on these champions. So I think this is exactly the way they should balance Liandry. Blackfire Torch, currently it's a plus 50 gold. I also don't think this is going to be the end of the world, right? Like, plus 50 gold to one of the best major mana items in the game is not going to be also the end of the world for Blackfire Torch. Now we go forward until he shows more. So, okay, this is another change here. So it's called Power Neutral Adjustment Leechbane. Leechbane is going to be 15 AP less. It's going to be 300 gold cheaper, and it's going to have a blasting wand in the build path. I think we can all agree that this is a buff to the item, because a better build path and a cheaper power spike is way more important. You have to understand that Leechbane is oftentimes rushed as first item on this vast majority of champions that rely on Leechbane. So this is a buff to Echo, maybe Diana, Twisted Fate, maybe slight buff, not so much. I don't know, maybe Akali will use it. Fee is obviously a big buff, right? So these champions are gonna like Leechbane buff a lot. The only time where this is a nerf is if the game goes to 6 items, you're selling your boots and you're buying Leechbane. At that point, it's going to be a nerf because you don't care about the 300 gold at that point, right? So maybe a slight nerf in late game. But yeah, it's still basically a buff to the item. Now here he yaps about blah, 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 here about some things. Okay, so buffs now. So there is more buffs than nerfs happening on this patch to a lot of these mage items, but a lot of the buffs are also to very bad items. I remember PHREAK was talking in the video that he's worried that mages are going to be a bit too strong with this, and I can kind of see that. So let's talk about it. So Bloodletter's Curse, plus 5 AP, plus 50 health, and 50% faster shot. Now, I'm not sure what 50% faster shot exactly means. This could affect a champ like Mel, which I mentioned earlier. You Q and then the whole shot gets applied or something, I don't know. It's a good buff. It's a good buff. I think this is just exactly what the item needs. I would probably rather see 10 AP than 50 health. I think this item does not actually need more health. I think this item, it's better if it just grants 10 more AP, but this is a good buff. Nosher's Tooth, personally worried about this one. Minus 100 gold, because my feeling is that Nosher is just kind of perfectly balanced. I just don't see why this item would need a buff, and I also don't see why this item would need a nerf. So here, Azir is really happy. I think Azir is just like somehow getting indirectly buffed. Like basically, Azir is considered the best mid in the game by pretty much every pro player, or like vast majority of pro players that are good at the game, right? And what happens is the new season drops, and all the changes are buffed to Azir, right? Like basically, Grubs being gone is buffed to Azir because the game is slower and stuff like that. And everything, and now Nosher's Tooth also 100 gold less. But anyway, buff to Azir, buff to AP Jax, buff to, I don't know, maybe Echo if he builds it, buff to Kale, obviously. Small buff. Okay. Morelnomicon, 100 gold cheaper, also a fine buff, but it's going to be the same item as before. You will want to buy Oblivion Orb, sit on it, not upgrade it until late game. Rabadon's Staff Cap, 100 gold less. Super happy about this one. I am a firm believer that Rabadon is underpowered. It has been for a very long amount of time. This is a good change for sure, to step into the right direction. Luden's Companion, a minus 100 gold. Also a good change, I think. This item can just be cheaper because it's mostly... Luden's mostly functions as a one item spike and then it's going to fall off compared to other items. This is just how naturally the item would work. This is going to put Luden's back on the menu for maybe certain champions. Zoe, LeBlanc, Vax, Burst type of champions. Zarat even. Because yeah, this is just going to be good enough. And then Malignus 5 plus AP. Very small buff on this one, not much here to say. I mean, certain champs here are happy. But a lot of these changes are very small. Now let me talk about the biggest change of the patch, which is about to happen here. So, first of all, Horizon Focus is going to lose the conditional damage amp. So the 10% damage is going to be removed. Instead, it's going to be more expansive and grant 35 AP. Is this a buff or a nerf? Well, it's most likely a buff to vast majority of champions. It's only a nerf if you are playing super long range, I guess, and you're constantly using the conditional damage here, the conditional damage amp. So it might be a slight nerf to Vel'Koz and Zarat, but it should be a buff to most champions in the game. Horizon Focus is going to give now the most AP, almost one of the most AP out of any mage items. So what this could mean is that a champion like Syndra might actually want to go Horizon now instead of Cosmic Drive, because this item gives like about 40 more AP than Cosmic Drive, something like that. Overall, the only sad part about the item is that it's 200 gold more expensive, which means that on second, like a lot of these mage item builds are very cheap. You spike fast on 2 items, then you can build into a 3rd item fast. This is gonna slow down, so the curve is gonna be slower. So for example, Ari going Malignance into Horizon, she can start building the Void really fast on free, or like a Mage, she can slot in a Mage much easier than another champion who has to build more expensive items. So this is going to be a slight change there. But Horizon does have a very good build path, to be fair. Overall, they're simplifying the item here, because the problem with Horizon is that it's a very good item, but people don't know how to read, especially low MMR players that just want to keep building Storm Surge and Shadow Flame all the time. So they're trying to make the item easier to understand. So side of me doesn't like the change, because I kind of like the uniqueness of the item. But yeah, the item is basically moving more towards being a stat check item. Hectic Rock Belt, plus 10 AP, plus 5 haste, minus 50 health, plus 50 gold. Definitely a buff to the item. This is much needed buff to champions like Akali and Nico and whatever. Yeah, a slightly better item. Storm Surge, plus 2 Moon Speed, minus 100 gold cheaper, but it loses the conditional 30 gold removed and the active Moon Speed % is removed. 100% a buff to the item. This conditional 30 gold is so dog shit. I had games where I had 0 gold earned from this item. This is just fucking dog shit. And the active Moon Speed is also like whatever. This is just a buff to the item. I think this is wrong by Riot. They should never buff Moon Speed on items, especially Storm Surge. Riot, we were there before months ago, where Moon Speed power creep was up, and then you guys had to nerf it to like 4%, and now we're just going in circles. Please, Riot, just give it more AP or Magic Pen. Let's not give it more Moon Speed. Why are we doing this? But yeah, it's a buff to the item. I think certain champions will really like this, obviously. Syndra maybe even. Like maybe even Syndra will want, if like there's some like, if the Magic Pen built in Syndra or something comes back, like she's just gonna like zoom around with the Moonspit. I don't know. And then lastly, I think this is the biggest change of the patch. Kriblum plus 15 AP, 5% plus pen, plus 150 gold, and minus 30%-ish healing on the aura. I think this item will probably be the best, one of the best mage items in the game. I think Kriblum is back. Void Stuff goodbye. Not because Void Stuff is bad or something, it's just that Kriblum is too strong. I just like don't see a reason why anybody would be buying Void Stuff next patch. Every single mage is going to be buying Kriblum now. Certain mages like that more than other ones because let's say you're playing a mage, like let's say you're playing Zaret, you probably care more about Void being good. Let's say you're playing, I don't know, Syndra or Hui, you care more about being Kriblum being good. So Kriblum being very good also means that you can actually skip more haste in the build and buy other items. Now let me give you an example. Let's say you're playing Syndra, you buy, I don't know, let's say you buy Blackfire Torch and Storm Surge or something like that, or Luden Storm Surge. Well, now it's a lot easier to just slot in Kriblum in your build and you get 20 haste from Kriblum. So Veigar also really likes this, for example. Like there's so many champions that like this change. Kriblum will be very OP for sure. And this item will need to be nerfed. It's too much of a buff. I also think that the item will be built, like you will be able to build the item on second item. Like there will be builds, I think, that are going to be good where you go, let's say, Blackfire Torch and Kriblum second item. I don't even think you need to wait third or fourth item with this item. You can literally buy it second already. And those are all the mage items. Those are all the changes, yeah. I mean, I can open the PB thread, but I think those are all the changes. There's like PB also here. I mean, some changes are like missing here, right? Like Bloodletter's Curse, it doesn't even mention that it stacks up faster. But yeah, those are all the AP changes. So basically, from my understanding, I think burst champions like LeBlanc are gonna become a little bit better because their main items are getting a lot better. Kriblum's gonna be very OP. Horizon's still gonna be fine. Probably a little bit less Cosmic Drive by some users, and they're maybe gonna swap to Horizon. Is there anything else? I mean, Storm Surge is going to be a lot better. Most of the mana items are going to stay relatively the same power level, to be fair, but they're going to be a little bit more evenly balanced now. That's it. That's it for the next patch.